Inspiring interviews with today's top landlords. This is the Rental Income Podcast. And now, Dan Lane.
2021 was another great year for the Rental Income Podcast. We talked to some incredible investors over the last year. I know I learned a lot. I know I gained a lot of inspiration from our guests. I loved hearing about their successes and their failures. I loved getting into their numbers and seeing exactly what they were doing. And at the end of each year, I like to reflect back on some of my favorite moments. And for the last few years, I've put together kind of a highlight show highlighting some of my favorite moments. I hate to say that these are the 5 best moments. I really don't know if they are, but they're 5 things that really stood out to me as big takeaways over the last year. So on the show today, we're going to walk through them, and I think you'll get a lot out of this. Maybe you've forgotten some of these moments, or maybe you missed some of these episodes, or if you're brand new, this is a great place to start. So let's take a really quick break. We'll thank our sponsors. We'll come right back, and we'll get into our first clip. A good deal on a rental property isn't going to last very long. To win properties today, you need to move quickly when a deal comes on the market, but it takes time to analyze a property. I want to let you know about an app where you can analyze deals on your phone in seconds. It's called Ask Rick, that's RIC for Rental Income Calculator. You can analyze a deal with the push of a button. You can figure out the rent, your mortgage payment, your expenses, and figure out the cash flow. If the numbers make sense, you can make an offer right there on the app, or you can send a calendar invite to your agent to see the property in person. Ask Rick is currently offering a free 7-day trial. Just search for Ask Rick in the App Store or go to Just Ask Rick. That's RIC, justaskrick.com. It's a lot of work to find a really good rental property, and when you actually find that property, you want to make sure you're working with a lender that can get that loan closed. The lender that I recommend is Jaylee Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. She's a nationwide lender, and her specialty is helping investors finance rental properties. She has a ton of loan programs, and she can find something customized to you for your situation. If you want to find out more or you're ready to get started today, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com. NMLS 42056.
Rental Income Podcast.
Our first clip today comes from Rich Levine, and Rich talked about the concept of buying rentals to create generational wealth.
Absolutely. In the world, I'm outside of DC where, half the people have wiki pages or big shot lawyers or this and that. My legacy is just under the radar, and I think of my legacy as what I can lend and give to my kids and my family. And this is my legacy. So it's actually, kind of emotional, and it's something that I really value. But yeah, I'm not doing this just for my retirement to have, 5 or 10,000 a month of passive income or more. That's great. I'm going to be okay financially. It's fine. But, my kids, I don't want them to be trust fund babies, but I do like the fact that there are assets that are going to be there to help them establish themselves in life. And those assets, they can choose what they want to do with them. They might stay in the family beyond them. And I like that fact. They're much bigger than cash flow for me. They're cash flow beyond me.
That to me is so powerful. And that's why I wanted to put this clip first, is that I think a lot of times people tend to think short term, but if you can think long term, and not long term as in 2 or 3 years, but if you can think about that you're buying these assets that are going to produce cash flow today, and they're going to produce cash flow for your kids and for your kids' kids. These rental properties that we're buying today could really change the entire trajectory of your family tree. And I think that is really incredible. If you want to hear more from Rich, he was on episode 305. And if you want to go back and look up any of these clips later on, I've got a link to everything on the website. You can find it at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 347. Our next clip is from Ferris Gossier. Ferris started investing in rental properties 2 years ago, And in 2 years, he built a rental portfolio that nets him $15,000 a month. And that's $15,000 a month after all expenses. And his strategy is really pretty simple. On episode 297, Ferris explained to us exactly what he's buying.
So my portfolio right now consists of a few single-family homes, a few duplexes, and about 5 4 units.
Okay. And what I think is really cool about what you've done is a lot of people that have grown really fast that we've had on the podcast have used the BRRRR strategy, or they're fixing up properties, but that's not what you're doing at all, right?
No, that's not what I'm doing. Haven't done any kind of refinancing, cash out, just a straight loan, 25% down. We did do one FHA loan, which was nice, with 3.5. But other than that, we've been doing 25 or 30 down with the bank.
Okay, so just regular traditional loans. And the properties you're buying, do they need a lot of work or any work at all?
No, mostly the stuff I've been buying does not need any renovations. They're currently rented out to mostly very good tenants, and it's just, you just buy it and take over the management of that property.
How are you financing these properties? Like, how are you, because like you said, you're putting down 25% on every deal. How are you coming up with the down payments?
So myself and my wife, we just save every penny we have. We've lived pretty frugally for the last 2.5 years. I had got very lucky out of college. I played pro tennis and had a great job working full-time, privately coaching a very kind family and wealthy family. So that was a great start for me. Went from there, coached tennis, working 80 hours a week, and just kind of reinvesting everything we got in the real estate, putting everything in from our jobs. No vacations, no fancy cars, just living in a 100K condo. So just really everything we had, just keep throwing at the real estate. And, I think when you can put your head down and just keep throwing money at it like that, it just pays off in the end.
That was Ferris Gossier from episode number 297. Next up from episode number 307 is John Morgan. And John talked to us about how he's thinking long-term with his rentals.
So my long-term goal, once I saw the power of leverage and all this cash flow, was to basically supplement my retirement. So I've always had, before I started real estate investing, I was 100% in the stock market, equities, 401k, Roth IRA. And I always was worried if I retire and the stock market just crashes for, say, a year or two, goes down maybe 20, 30%, whatnot, it'd be a struggle drawing the same amount out of my monthly, out of my retirement. And it'd be stressful. Well, if I could diversify my portfolio into something else, I don't know. I stumbled into this real estate once we had that original cash offer accepted and started really doing homework and crunching the numbers on this and thinking, if I got 10 rental properties with a net passive cash flow of 10 to 12,000 a month, that would really help.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now. With all my bills paid, taxes, insurance, and all that, it should be about 10 to 12,000 a month. And I've got all my properties on 15-year mortgages. So they will all be paid off. I'm 50 years old now. And I retired at 65. So everything should be paid free and clear. And if I need money, let's say the stock market's down and I can't live off, say, 10 grand a month, I can always do a cash out refi with my bank.
That's true. Or even sell one off if you had to. Yeah, you've got options.
Right.
Now, I love talking about the 15-year versus the 30-year. So for anyone that doesn't understand, with a 30-year mortgage, you're going to have a lower mortgage payment. So you've got more cash flow today. Or with a 15-year mortgage, you've got a bigger mortgage payment, but the benefit is you're going to have your properties paid off way faster. So did you ever think that, I guess what was your plan? I want to get these properties paid off in 15 years, so I'm just going to suck it up and take that bigger mortgage payment? Or did you ever consider, well, maybe I could get a 30-year mortgage and make extra payments on it and get it paid off in the same period of time?
Right. Well, for me to have the least amount of rentals, that would produce about 10 grand a month passive cash flow when I'm retired was the goal. I self-manage all these except that one vacation rental out of town in Branson. So for me, I'd rather just self-manage these and have the fewest amount. Plus, it'd keep my wife happy. If I could probably double or triple my portfolio. I could probably get 30-year mortgages and have 20 or 30 homes, but that's 20 or 30 more text messages or calls I may be getting per month. So for me, less is more. Some people need 20,000 a month, 30,000. We've been pretty simple people. I don't need that much. So 10 is like pretty good round number. In 15-year mortgages, my cash flow is not crazy good. Right now it's $4,500 a month after I pay all my expenses. Things always break. That doesn't include CapEx or vacancies, but that's a good enough cushion right now where there's some months I go 1, 2, 3 months in a row, nothing breaks, nothing happens. That's, 9, 13, 15 grand in my pocket. So that's comfortable for me. But for most people who are young that want to quit their jobs and retire, I enjoy my W-2 and I'll just keep going another 15 years. But for them, scaling up with 30-year mortgages, I totally understand that. They could pay it off earlier if they want. But for me, it's hard for me to pay something off quick. For example, I got a car loan 5 years ago and I said, I'll pay this thing off in 2 years. I'll just double up my payments. I've only made one extra payment.
It's hard to do that. Yeah,
it's hard to do that. But I don't really need the cash flow now. But some people need a lot extra monthly cash flow to cover their other expenses. So I'm cool with just the 15-year mortgages.
I really love that strategy. That was John Morgan from episode number 307. And of course, if you want to look up any of these episode numbers and listen to the entire interview later on, I've got episode numbers and links to all the full interviews on my website. You can find them all at rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 347. Next up is Lee Blackburn. Lee, I thought, had a very interesting take because he's a rental property investor and he also owns a property management company. So he's seen what's worked for him, what hasn't worked for him, and he's seen what's worked for his clients and what hasn't worked for his clients. And on episode number 298, we talked about what kind of property makes the best rental.
From my experience, as you noted, and in my primary market, it really doesn't matter. 3 bedrooms rent pretty much as easily as a 2-bedroom or vice versa. It really just depends on the overall demand on the product. We do find single family homes versus a condo type property do lease better. Retention rates are higher, et cetera, on the actual product type. But when you drill down the detail within the product, we do not find necessarily a leg up on a 3 or 4 bedroom house over a 2-bedroom house. It just depends on the general demand component. I think from a resale perspective, I think, a lot of people think the rule is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a garage and a small maintainable yard is going to sell better than the next. I have not seen that in direct experience.
Okay.
Like I said, I think, especially in my market, single family homes absolutely trump a condo type property for many reasons, which might be worth another call one day. But I think 2 versus 3 bedrooms really doesn't make that big of a difference.
And do you see more turnover? So they all rent pretty easily, but do you see more turnover? Like my impression, I don't own any 1-bedrooms, but my impression would be that you're maybe going to get a lot of people that are younger or earlier in their career, and maybe they're more likely to move. Am I right in thinking that, or not really?
You are, to a degree, absolutely. There is a fundamental level of transience with a quote unquote smaller property, and that's going to lend to the demographic that's living in these properties. So on the one hand, a single family home with 3 bedrooms, considered perhaps a larger house, is generally going to attract perhaps a young family with school age kids. And we absolutely do see longer occupancy rates for that property type versus the 1-bedroom, urban periphery flat that, a guy right out of law school trying to trying to get his legs under him professionally is going to live in, has easy access to downtown, maybe a really high end finish. And then, life / professional trajectory changes, and, he takes a job across the country. We do see more transients and the smaller type property.
That was Lee Blackburn from episode number 298. 2021 was a challenging year to invest in rental properties. There weren't a whole lot of properties for sale, and prices were appreciating pretty rapidly. But we did have one big advantage, that interest rates were very low. And on episode number 339, John Brooks pointed out something about the interest rates.
Yeah, and that really is the deal. That's the discount, is the interest rates. Really, that's really the bottom line. I know everyone wants to get a property discounted, off market, negotiate, but really the negotiation, the discount is the interest rate being so low right now compared to, especially when I started in the real estate industry, 2003 and other years where they're 5, 6, 7%. And so until interest rates really continue to increase, you almost can't afford not to borrow money at these interest rates and prices.
Very true. That was John Brooks from episode number 339. Buying rental properties can be exciting. Buying rental properties can make you a lot of money, but you got to be careful and you got to really take the time to make sure that you know what you're doing. Unfortunately, Ramon Huerta didn't do that, and he ended up losing out big time. He built a rental portfolio, and ultimately everything fell apart, and he ended up going bankrupt. On episode number 328, he told us what happened.
When I first started out, it was just about volume, and it was trying to get to, my number was 50. And I just thought as soon as I got to 50 doors, then I would be looked at kind of as a serious investor. So that was really my focus, is how can I buy and get to 50.
Okay. And so you weren't thinking about profitability at all, or you wanted to make a certain amount per door. You just thought if you got to 50, you would have untold riches and you would be set.
Yeah, so it almost was just kind of like almost that appearance to say, like, hey, I own 50 properties, right, or 50 doors. I think that was more, I think I wanted it to make it so bad, so fast, that's what I was kind of concentrating on. And early on, when I first got started, some of the materials that I was reading and stuff like that, they were saying that, it's fine as long as you're making like $50 a door, and you stack them up, and then you have 10, you have 15, you have 20, all that will kind of add up, and you're going to be okay.
What happened? Like when did everything kind of blow up, or how did it blow up?
It just started with properties, and there were some really good ones, and then I started taking from those that were cash flowing or doing really good, and then feeding these poorer ones, or the ones that had more vacancies, the one I just had problems with tenants. Early on, it was like I didn't screen properly. It was just kind of like I believed everything everybody said, and and then you just didn't want to be the bad guy and put somebody else out, and they would tell you, "Oh, I'll pay you next month," or "This is going to happen," and you're like, "Oh, okay." Until you got to the point where now you couldn't cover those payments. Then you were, a month behind, and it was like 2 months behind, and then you're just paying catch up. And it just kind of spiraled, and you start taking it from your good property that's producing and then covering the bad one. And it just kind of just
spiraled.
Snowball effect. Spiral down. And then next thing you know, you're already down, and there's really nothing else that you can see,
Yeah. And then, so you thought, okay, I've just got to declare bankruptcy to get out of this.
Yeah. As soon as, I just started losing some of the properties, you just start kind of, and it was, there's also, well, for me, it was this kind of like this shame, like I thought like, man, I was on track. I was telling everybody about real estate and how it was great. And I was an investor and things of that nature. And then, things start crumbling and falling apart. I believe if I'd have just seeked out some help with some other investors or other people that were really into it, and I think I wrote it out. I still would have. I would have needed to cut some of those and take some of those losses, and definitely. But there was some that I could probably could have kept and wrote it out. But at that point, it was just like you just out. There was just this shame over me, and it's like how I just felt like I was just a failure, and I just failed, and I just took the loss.
Ramon made a lot of mistakes. He did a lot of things wrong. He ended up losing a bunch of rental properties to foreclosure, and that ultimately led to a bankruptcy. But the episode actually does have a happy ending. He was able to start buying rental properties again, and today he's got a much smaller rental portfolio that's actually way more profitable than the portfolio that he lost. If you want to listen to the episode, it is number 328 with Ramon Huerta. And of course, if you want to look up any of the episodes that we talked about today, I've got links to everything on the website. Just go to rentalincomepodcast.com/episode 347. I'd like to thank today's sponsor for making this episode possible. It's Jaylee Ridge from Ridge Lending Group. If you want to get a loan on a rental property, but you don't want to go through providing your tax statements and pay stubs and all the documentation that goes into a loan, make sure you reach out to Jaylee Ridge. She has a new loan program where she only cares about the deal. She's going to look at the deal, make sure it cash flows, and if it does, she will give you a loan, and the rates are pretty competitive. They're a little bit more than the loans you would get on the rates you would get on a full doc loan, but it's still pretty good, somewhere between 3.9 and 5%. If you want some more details, just go to ridgelendinggroup.com. That's RIDGE lendinggroup.com, NMLS 42056. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. If this is your first time here, make sure you follow the show or hit subscribe, and you will get notified when the next show comes out. My name is Dan Lane, and this has been the Rental Income Podcast.